Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to join us as part of this broadcast today. My name's Dave Bursell. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here at MoviTHERM, and I have with me Markus Tarin, who's President and CEO. You want to say hi, Markus?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining.
So as you know, our subject for today is to talk about iEFD, or what we're calling IoT early fire detection. We have an agenda prepared for you as part of this broadcast today. First, we will start with a bit of an introduction of who MoviTHERM is. And then we're going to dive right into the subject matter. What is iEFD? Following that, and I guess kind of as part of that, we'll be talking about different applications for iEFD. We'll dive a little more into the features of iEFD. And then, of course, we'll have time set aside for questions and answers. So diving right into it, Markus, you've been at MoviTHERM since its inception. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the history, the background. You started this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has been, almost 23 years. Time is flying. Yeah, so we started out as Epsilon Technologies International, later on made it an LLC, and then added some DBAs, doing business as, to the mix. One of them is this MoviTHERM. We're located down here in Southern California in Irvine, about an hour south of Los Angeles, have currently 11 employees and are growing, got an industrial facility here, 5,000 square feet. And our focus is entirely on thermal imaging solutions with respect to industrial backgrounds, automated thermal imaging, non-destructive testing, and IoT solutions.
One of the things that was really impressed me is actually this vision statement that MoviTHERM has, which is making hindsight irrelevant. And how MoviTHERM does that is through these smart thermography solutions. And these smart thermography solutions, they're all about enhancing awareness. And the thing that I really see that the MoviTHERM team does so very well is taking these really complex projects and problems and really making them so simple and easy. But I loved that statement, Markus, that you said, making hindsight irrelevant. And maybe you can expound a little bit on what does that exactly mean?
Yeah, that really comes from customers coming to us, having gone through some painful losses or experiences on quality, shipping out thousands of products and realizing they have a leaker on a packaging system, or an aerospace company coming in having to scrap a $1.5 million part because they didn't know they had a flaw in the part. And then they starting to reach out and saying, man, we got to do better on the quality assurance side. Can you guys help us out? So I've been just thinking, when we were talking about the vision statement, about those things and saying, what do we really do here? And this making hindsight irrelevant was really resonating and just popping into my mind. Because once our systems are in place, we eliminate that sort of gotcha moment, the sort of like, man, I wish I would have done something about this earlier, this hindsight feeling, where the old saying goes, hindsight is always 20/20. If I knew back then what I know now, I would have been able to prevent this. And that's kind of what our solutions bring to our customer. The essence of the value is really to make that irrelevant, to just basically say, this is not going to happen again to you, and I think that's creating this peace of mind and the value in that statement, essentially.
I've thought about that statement a lot. And especially now as I look at, well, even what we're going to talk about today, iEFD, it's easy to see this vision and this concept of making hindsight irrelevant in the iEFD solution. So for those of you who are listening in, I challenge you to be thinking about how this iEFD solution makes hindsight irrelevant. It's going to help avoid this process of just having to go through the pain. So regarding what is iEFD, I guess let's dive right in.
Yeah, so early fire detection has been around for some time, but as I mentioned earlier, we like to re-innovate, we like to disrupt, and we like to challenge the status quo with our solutions. And this comes really from an evolutionary point of view from ourselves, because we were constantly faced with the challenges of customers contacting us, and maybe even for the same application, but each customer still has a difference in needs, even if you're in the same solution for, let's say, in this case, early fire detection. So one customer says, okay, I need 3 cameras, the next customer needs 11. They have different ways of how they want to get alerted and notified and all those different things. So we found ourselves constantly reinventing the wheel by having to modify software packages, and there was a long turnaround time. There was a lot of engineering hours going into this, and then some of that cost obviously we had to transfer to our customers, and it made for a fairly expensive sort of a solution, while at the same time it prevented us from being able to scale up our solutions across the board. So even though we had the solution, we still had these one-offs with every customer because of the modifications necessary there. So it was very hard to find kind of the common ground. So what we did is we transferred, as part of this evolution, we transferred our solution now into the cloud, and with that created a highly customizable, very configurable system that allows us to tweak without having to reprogram or change anything. We can tweak the solution now based on everybody's customer needs, and also taking away the ownership, if you will, from the customer having to own expensive one-off sort of software locally, and then having to worry about obsolescence of that software or patching it with upgrades or worrying about Microsoft pushing upgrades that breaks the system and all those kind of pain factors that come with that. And we have transferred all of that now into the cloud, running on a secure Amazon Web Services server. And so everything is accessible via a web browser from any sort of internet-enabled device. And it's really great to see that come to life. It has been also truly a scalable solution for us that we can just apply across the board, really.
One of the things that I guess has just really amazed me, Markus, is how quickly that need to kind of tweak and customize things for a particular customer. And I remember the story that you shared, and I know we'll get into the details, but it was auto dialer. Can you talk about that example, that experience you had with the auto dialer?
Yeah, that's a very good example. We had actually deployed a traditional or more traditional early fire detection system in an industrial laundry application with our Mio product. And the customer said, we do need to get notified, but we need to be called. And the reason for that is the guy that was running the plant says, well, what if I'm sleeping and something happens? Often we have these industrial laundry piles sitting there, and I'm worried about them catching fire, and just receiving a text message or so wouldn't wake me up from a deep sleep. So they insisted on needing an auto dialer. So at the time we purchased an auto dialer, a physical instrument, if you will, a device, and integrated this electrically into our control cabinet on site. But we found quickly that it was just another device that needed to be managed. We needed physical phone lines to be run to that device. I remembered actually running to a local Office Depot to pick up a phone, because this thing, you had to program it with a phone attached by pushing the number buttons to get it into different modes. It was extremely cumbersome. And then I had to speak and re-record or pre-record the outgoing message. And it was very cumbersome, to put it easy or put it lightly here. And so that whole experience frustrated me, and saying, like, this is not simple. This is not user friendly at all. So we actually used that as an inspiration for our cloud system to virtualize that device, the auto dialer. And we actually have an auto dial function built in that the customer can configure themselves. They can simply type in as many phone numbers for the recipients as they would like for these messages to go out. And then they don't have to audio voice record anything. They can literally type the message in that it needs to say. It says, hey, here's a problem that camera 3 sees on this location, whatever makes sense. And the system will then perform a text to speech sort of process, and then a friendly voice is going to then go out and notify you if call and notify you if something happens. This is, again, it's one of those things that we strive to do, is to take something really complex and cumbersome and simplify it and make it very user friendly.
That goes back to the vision statement, right, of what you guys are trying to do. And that's what I've seen is MoviTHERM takes these very complex that description of you having to go through the pain of setting up that auto dialer to now you type in text in the application and say when you want it to go out and you're done. What also amazed me is how quickly that was implemented in the application. Did it take a week to get that in there, if that?
It was about a week and then some testing. So from inception to launch, it was 2 weeks to get a feature like that added. Yeah.
Just amazing. And what's awesome is that because that feature, if you will, was built into the application, that resides in the cloud. Everybody who has access to it automatically got that update. That's
Right.
just so impressive.
Yeah, which is awesome because customers are the greatest inventors sometimes when it comes to needs, because all they have is pain factors and say, I wish it would do this. I wish we could do that. Wouldn't it be great if it could do this? And I think it's invaluable to listen to customers. And if I hear more than one person mentioning these things, I keep collecting these as notes and keep tracking these things. And if I keep hearing these things, then I'm like, oh, there's really a need out there for that feature. And then we basically do this customer driven invention process where we take that feedback in, and not only do we now put that in like in the old days where we put this only in this feature up at this customer, we can now push the updates, like you said, to every customer. Now everybody benefits from it, which is great.
How about we drill in and talk a little more about iEFD and maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you've had installations.
So industrial laundry facility, I mentioned earlier, we have experience in doing, like, let's call it older technology deployments from a few years back, and learning from that, and now having the cloud-based solutions there. So industrial laundry is definitely one of those applications. We got the metal recycling facilities. We're deploying another system right now into that, where they do have issues where they have combustibles, shredded in the metal, and that sometimes catches fire, and it could be multi-million-dollar sort of damages if something happens there. And the problem is the facility operators don't notice necessarily quickly that there is something smoldering or something like this until, the way the fire expands is so rapid that if you don't catch it early, it gets out of control so rapidly. It's almost too late by the time you notice it, and that's kind of where our fire detection technology comes in, where we detect it before the fire starts, just as a hotspot to begin with, or hot gases escaping from the pile, leading us to believe, hey, there's something going on that shouldn't be happening right now, and then sending out those alerts for somebody to check on this thing, and maybe pull the pile apart, and make sure, maybe there's that lithium ion battery pack that got smashed into the whole thing, and now it's starting to. We saw all of those things on the news, right? Whether that's the e-cigarettes where people's pants are catching on fire or something, or the cell phones or the electric vehicles out there, they all have issues with lithium ion battery packs because they're very volatile once they get damaged, right? If you take a hammer to a battery pack, that's kind of what happens. They kind of combust,
Other applications, Markus, for this iEFD solution.
Yeah, any sort of what we call or refer to as pile monitoring. If you have large piles of stuff, this could be biological waste. It could be, any sort of waste bunkers where you just have the trash recycling, any biomasses. It could be mulch, anything that's being used to incinerate and create energy from that, driving a turbine and all those kind of things. Really, most of these piles, or could be coal even as a storage, not so much as a recycling, most of these piled up materials do pose a fire hazard for different reasons, but it's a big issue. And then the problem becomes too, you have a control house somewhere on one side of the pile, but these piles are like 100 and 150 feet high or something, or sometimes 30 feet high. But the problem is you don't see the other side. So if something happens on the other side of the pile, and the people are sitting, on the other side, opposite side to where the fire happens, it will take a while before they notice it, that sort of thing. Or there may not be somebody there 24/7 at the facility. What are you going to do then? What are you going to rely on? And smoke development during the day, if it's not cloudy against a blue background, smoke is pretty visible from pretty far. If you have a pretty gloomy day, it might be raining, it might be gray sky. Seeing gray smoke against the gray sky, not so much, So it really depends on the weather conditions and who's paying attention before somebody reports something, and how quickly the fire department can roll out, and how familiar are they with the facility. Like, where should
Mhm.
they enter? Some of these facilities are huge. Where should they enter? Where are the fire hydrants located? That's all valuable time lost for the local fire department to roll out, and not being familiar with the facility.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a great transition for us to talk about features that are found within the iEFD solution.
Quickly, as a high level, I think we haven't really mentioned yet that our technology is primarily based on using IR or thermal cameras that can actually detect heat or hot spots before a fire formation actually happens. So that's kind of the key that buys you that extra valuable time compared to other fire detection technologies. Like a sprinkler would have to get physically hot before it pops open and actually disperses the water. But then you find also in most cases that the water then does the almost more damage than the fire did in the first place, kind of a thing. So I think that's where our technology is very superior, that we can actually do these early warnings, and our system allows you don't have to alert the fire department on the first sign of something getting warm. You can just tell a facility manager or a maintenance person to say, hey, you know what, camera so and so is seeing something over there on the north end of the pile. You may want to go over there, check it out. And that early prevention, just seeing
Mm.
this several minutes early, could be making the difference between a catastrophic loss and just somebody taking a shovel and moving like that battery pack out of the pile that just got too hot or something, right, before something happens. So I think that's important to point out. We talked about the IoT or the IIoT, the industrial Internet of Things integration, and some of the advantages of bringing that whole system to the cloud. We do have the customized notifications. As I said, we can have early warnings going out and have different action processes attached to that, versus the full-blown alarm where, hey, there's really now a fire. Now let's call the fire department and give them a notification. So you have this layered sort of notification structure in this, and the customization is endless. You can literally go in and you can do it by camera, by sensor, if have different rule sets under what conditions, maybe at a different temperature because you're looking at a different pile of material, and then notify employee A, B, and C. And on the other one you're doing D, E, F. It kind of depends what you can do there, but it makes it's not just one global alarm going out. It's super customizable. As we said, it is cloud-based. We have the ability to bring these systems into the cloud without even touching the customer's network. So we
Mm.
have cell phone modem capabilities that we also fully manage, including SIM cards and data subscriptions. So you don't have to go to your local T-Mobile or whoever the cell phone provider is. We manage all of this as part of the system. So it makes it, again, super simple for the customer. And we monitoring the data usage and everything else. And if there's overages, we can adjust the subscription plans and all those kind of things. We got the ability to automate processes. So we're not just alarming and monitoring. We can actually set outputs. Let's say if you wanted to actually have a fire suppression system connected to our system, we have digital outputs, even remotely based over Ethernet, that allows you to say, hey, if this alarm condition happens here and there, you can turn that fire suppression system on for X amount of time. So we have the smarts built into our, what we haven't touched upon yet is our intelligent gateways that we have that are local, that are at the same time also providing a redundancy. So even if you were to lose the internet connection, our system keeps functioning, and the cloud system will alarm and says, hey, I can't talk to the gateway anymore. you have lost connection. So you get in that alarm message while the system locally keeps monitoring and doing its thing. So there's no disruption to a critical system like this. And then once they connect again, it's all good. And then you have both sides again. But that's, I think it's noteworthy to point that out as well.
I know we're going to drill down even more so now into some of these features that iEFD has, that ability, to access all of this essentially from anywhere, right? Anywhere you have an
Right.
internet connection is, to me, is just such an advantage. You're not restricted to a single computer or single server that is like at the office or at the facility somewhere. But if you need to get into the system, you can do that at any time from anywhere with
Exactly.
credentials, right?
Yeah, I mean, whether you're on a business trip or you're grabbing dinner with your wife, if you're nervous and you wish to do so, you can just open up your app real quick, check on things, and says, "Oh, phew, okay, everything is in the green. We're good to go. I can enjoy my dinner now."
This is such a huge benefit to have this technology available. What I love about infrared, for me at least, it's like the oldest new technology on the market, right? I mean, it's been around for 50 years plus, but it seems like we're always discovering new applications for the technology. And early fire detection, yeah, it's been around for a while, but it seems to be even growing even more so now. And now that you've added this internet capability to it through iEFD, I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Markus.
Yeah, so exactly. Think about Ring doorbell as probably one of those examples, right? I mean, how has Ring doorbell disrupted the industry in terms of knowing? I mean, how often have you found yourself walking to the door and then maybe peeking through the little window at the door if you had one and wondering, well, who's this now? Maybe you're in your pajamas on a Sunday morning or something. You're like, okay, who's at the door, right? This was always the big thing. Or, but then the Ring doorbell took it one step further. You didn't even have to get up from your couch. You have it on your cell phone. And then if you want to do it one step further, it's like, okay, if you are, to take the same example, if you're out with your wife having dinner somewhere in a restaurant and somebody rings your doorbell, now you can actually not only see who's at your door, but you can actually talk to the person that's at your door, right? So the same concept is kind of what we have done here with the thermal imaging world, if you will, with respect to this early fire detection. We have taken the same sort of approach here where you have everything at your fingertips. And as I said, these cameras can detect the slightest temperature rise. You getting your notification wherever you are in the world and whoever you want to be notified, from emails to text messages to audio calls. And this is kind of like in the order of urgency, right? An email is
Mm.
kind of like, yeah, whenever you get to it, here's your report of what happened today, kind of a thing. Then the text message is, hey, you may want to pay attention to this. And then the phone call is like, you better pick up right now because you have an issue, right? So, and that's the sort of thing that we have there with these capabilities. That's what I'm saying. Like the Ring doorbell example kind of came to mind, how it disrupted the absolute accepted traditional 100-year-old sort of a knock on somebody's door and you will be let in or not kind of a problem, right?
Yeah, I love that example. You mentioned gateways earlier. Why are these gateways so important to this iEFD?
These gateways, we have looked at cost-effective ways to bring intelligent to the edge, right? The edge, for the folks that are listening in here that are not so familiar with the terminology evolving around IoT, the Internet of Things. Let's back off a little bit. So Internet of Things is really referring to um, all kinds of devices having an intelligence, being able to be connected to the internet and exchanging data or uploading data so that you can see what your processes are doing, in the cloud, really on the internet, right? So when the internet was launched, if you will, it was just PCs, computer connected to the internet. Now, I think the devices that are internet enabled have outpaced the number of PCs already on the internet, and it's predicted to be going exponentially higher. So, I mean, your smartwatch can talk to the internet. You have your sprinkler system at home, your pool pump. I mean, your fridge, right? So you're at the grocery store and you're saying, "Did I run out of eggs?" Or whatever the case may be, right? superset from this funny egg minder, if anybody knows about that product. But that's kind of what the Internet of Things really is. The extra I in front of it, the industrial Internet of Things, is really what our technology goes into. We don't do consumer-based solutions. We do the industrial business-to-business world. And these intelligent gateways allow us to make decisions on the edge, and the edge is basically the factory floor or your facility. It's local, close to the sensors or actuators that you're controlling and monitoring. And gateway is basically a mini computer now that connects these devices together and facilitates the communication and data flow to and from the cloud. But when you have any sort of IoT architecture, it always it's almost a philosophy kind of decision, because it's driven by philosophy, because you can either transfer all the intelligence into the cloud and have quote unquote more or less dumb devices and sensors that all they can do is communicate with the cloud, or you can have a ton of intelligence on the gateway side and use the cloud side only for displaying the data. And either one of those combinations has pros and cons. What was important for us to do and to achieve here with our early fire detection solutions that is internet based, we really wanted to make sure we're creating flexibility on one side, being somewhat sensor or camera agnostic, but also providing that extra level of redundancy. So because things happen, I mean, you can have a bad cell reception, right? I mean, that does happen. You can have outages there, or if you don't use the cellular connection to the internet, you're using the customer's internet. I mean, how often does it happen that the internet service goes down? And this is totally out of your control. So what do you do when these things happen? You don't want to be blind to any sort of fire situations for a couple of hours just because your internet provider has decided to do some unannounced maintenance on their service, for instance, right? Or some truck ran into the communications hub on the intersection, and now you're down. So what our system does, it continuously communicates with the cloud until it doesn't. And if it doesn't, it continues its job on these intelligent gateways locally. So if you do have local alarming hooked up, it will still set off that alarm beacon and the alarm siren. It will still initiate the fire suppression system and all those kind of things, while at the same time the cloud system also notices, oh, wait a minute, I can't reach the cameras anymore. I can't reach the gateway. So I will send you still, even though I'm disconnected, an alarm message and say, hey, I can't reach the gateway anymore. So you have it from both sides. And that's probably the best we could have done to kind of, preemptively deal with any sort of technology outages that are, happening here and there. There's just nothing you can do about it. So that's the kind of thing. And then on the cloud side, we wanted the most reliable uptime one can achieve, and therefore we have made the investment to place our cloud solution on an Amazon web server, which I think now is 99.97% guaranteed uptime. So that is about the best in the industry that you can achieve while being, fully secure.
Yeah, there was something that came to mind as you were just describing the purpose of the gateway, and also I guess it would be an alert or notification. It's not just alerts and notifications that, oh, I may have a fire, but if I understand correctly, it's the health, if you will, of the system itself that's monitoring, right? The
Absolutely.
EFD system. So is it performing? Am I running properly? You said something about, have I lost connection with the camera? So you're not just getting notified, oh yeah, there's a potential warm spot, but oh, my system may have a problem.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, you bring up a very important point. In addition to this redundancy, what our customers also get with a subscription is that they're getting free system health monitoring included. So part of that is automated, where the cloud is intelligent enough to realize, hey, if I haven't gotten any data in a minute or so, there's something wrong, and it so you get notified. But we also, MoviTHERM gets notified, hey, customer so and so has a problem with camera 17,
Hmm.
and so we get that message, and our technology team here, our support team jumps on that and says, hey, what's going on there? Let's troubleshoot this. And we have additional health monitoring behind the scenes built into also part of the intelligent gateway. So we can remote into the system and perform troubleshooting most of the time. I would say greater than 95% of the time, the customer has no clue that something wasn't working for a minute. We go in, fix it, and they would never know, you know? But we have those things logged so we can keep an eye on it. So if something happens that happens more often than it should, we can notify the customer, say, hey, we may have to come on site and do something, or something like that. Or you may want to check the connection. Maybe somebody damaged a cable or something. I mean, stuff like that happens. So you have the peace of mind that, like you said, it's not only worried about detecting the fire, which is its main purpose, but at the same time, it's also self-monitoring, and the additional layer that we have, keeping an eye on the system health. We can even go as far as pushing firmware updates to the cameras remotely, or we can change the logical behavior of our intelligent gateways remotely. We have that all configurable. So if for whatever reason, customer says, hey, the sprinkler or fire suppression system should come on for 10 seconds longer before it turns off, that's configurable. We can do and change these things, and work with the customer to make it really fine tune the system the way it should work.
Yeah, it sounds like the maintenance or support burden for a customer for this type of system is minimal, if any, since you have this
Exactly.
capability remotely over the cloud. Now, I'm going to ask
Yeah.
the question, Marcus, because I know sometimes we get a little concerned about securities, when things are in the cloud. Now, you touched on this a little bit. You talked about the Amazon Web Services, and since you brought it up, maybe you can comment on, or maybe you could share just some insight on why you don't need to be concerned with this being on the cloud from a security perspective, that things are safe.
Right. Yeah, this whole thing was driven um, by MoviTherm actually is undergoing right now. We are a registered government contractor, and cybersecurity and ransomware. I mean, everybody has heard about it in the news. Um, Entire companies or critical infrastructure being taken down by hackers, and I mean, it's a there's a cyber war going on, and you better do your homework. And a lot of companies are, which I'm hearing when we talk about touching their infrastructure in terms of communications and internet or Ethernet networking of the sorts. They now have a long list of, hey, these are all the things that you need to do in order before, for us to okay your devices to be on our infrastructure. So we looked at all of this, and also with the experience that we have gained and are still gaining with becoming a government certified cybersecurity house here, because we're working under the DoD, the Department of Defense. So we have to adhere to the highest level of cybersecurity, not just on a commercial level, but on a government level. Um, and so we have taken some of that experience and said, hey, we have the responsibility towards our customers to create a very secure system, right? So the highest degree of security is really by physically not touching the infrastructure of the customer. And by that, I mean, we can provide our internet connection through a cellular modem, and the system never touches physically um, the customer's network, right? So you can't hack something that's physically not connected. That is the highest level. That is the highest level of security there. However, though, I mean, you're still looking at a website, um, you know, and basically touching that system that way virtually, if you will. But that's a whole lot more secure because you can't really do much through this path. But nonetheless, though, so we have that built in. Even if we are sitting on the customer's network, if they decide, hey, we don't want cellular, we don't need cellular, you can tie into our infrastructure in terms of our network. We typically work on a separated network. We are on managed switches. Our system has a firewall built in. So there's all these, all the ports are locked down except for the ones that we need. And so all the good practices in terms of security and cybersecurity, network security are being put in to make sure that nothing really can happen there. And it really has a high degree of security. Also, the data transfer from the system into the cloud goes over a 2048-bit encryption. When do you ever hear that? Typically, it's like if it's 256 bits, it's a lot and it's considered very secure. We do 2048 bit, so that's out there. But that just came with the whole Amazon infrastructure in combination with our infrastructure. So there's a lot of things we do, and we're very forward looking because we appreciate the concerns on that side.
Yeah.
Another thing that we have here. This multi-carrier option that may be worth highlighting as well. We, in terms of fail-safe switchovers, what if let's say the whole system is based on a cellular connection, we have another fail-safe built in, and that's our multi-carrier plans. So it's an intelligent SIM card. It's an industrial IoT SIM card that together with the modem can decide, hey, if my signal gets too weak or it's cutting out, let's say you're on the T-Mobile network and for some reason it's cutting out, it will look in its lookup table and say there's 2 or 3 more providers in the area, and it will pick the next best one in terms of signal strength and seamlessly switch over without you noticing it. So that provides additional redundancy on that side as well, especially for like, fire detection systems. That might be interesting.
That's awesome. This has got to simplify an integration or an installation if you go the cellular route, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just the elimination of all the wiring and dealing. There's zero IoT burden, meaning typically we don't even have to involve the IoT department at this point because we're completely physically separated. And we're just sitting in the field monitoring. We have a little control box typically there where we have the cellular modem in our intelligent gateways, and then some IoT, or not IoT, but Ethernet switches rather, that provide the power to the cameras. You're just running an Ethernet drop from that box to your camera and power. That's it. You're done.
That's awesome.
There's nothing more to do.
That's awesome. So, Markus, you talked a little bit early on about, I don't know what I would call it, the old style auto dialer compared to, what we have now on
Right.
the iEFD. What are some of the other differences that you see? And I guess maybe I'll just refer to the system similar to the auto dialer, early fire detection, to this iEFD. What are some of the other big differences that you see?
Right. So the system, since we touched on these things, simplified cable run, because we just have this one controller that's directly cloud connected. You don't have any PCs in there. You don't have operating systems in there to maintain and to patch from a cybersecurity point. And then if you patch, typically that breaks something in your software if you don't watch out. You don't have to upgrade your application software and patch with Microsoft patches along. You don't have to migrate it 2 or 3 years down the road. I mean, we're already on Windows 11 now, so I remember just retiring some system from Windows 7 just was obsolete. Now we're Windows 10, and before we know it, we're already Windows 11. So there's a lot of burden on traditional EFD systems or any other systems out there. Like if you're deploying software locally, physically, down on a traditional PC, think about the life cycle management. Think about the burden on the the IT department, to be able to maintain all of this, because I mean, these days your PC is 6 months old. You want the next machine because it's getting too slow, right? Or your hard drive fails, or whatever,
Tell me about it.
your virus scanner is nagging you, or whatever. Um, so so not only do you have to worry about obsolescence on the hardware, you have to worry about, okay, my IT department tells me we have to be on Windows 11. Well, if you upgrade to Windows 11, your application may not be compatible. Now you got to contact the vendor and say, well, we need to upgrade this thing. They say, well, we're not there yet, So now, like, okay, now what, right? So you have all this hassle and this rat's tail of things to manage, just because you have an old traditional system sitting there running on a PC, right? So again, this comes out of our own pain factors. We have been that company. We
Hmm.
have been working with customers through this thing. Not only this, but also our development tools. When we program applications, we get now every 3 months updates and patches sent. That means that if I'm patching my development environment and upgrading it every 3 months, I have to keep migrating the software over to keep it on the latest and greatest every time. And we have so many solutions. That's a lot of burden. That's a lot of cost to be maintained and tested again, because every time you change something, you might introduce new bugs, right? So you're in this constant life cycle do loop, and the vendor is as well as the customer. So that's a huge burden, if you think about it. Plus, you have the upfront expense. Um, Most of these systems cost tens of thousands of dollars. So you have to invest into this whole thing. And then if there's upgrades, they typically cost additional because of that burden that I just mentioned. There's labor going into these upgrades and maintaining these at the vendor side. So therefore, you have um, definitely the cost that you're sharing with your vendor. In the next upgrade is going to cost another $4,000 and this and that, and we all know that. We've been through that. So our internet-based or cloud-based system completely eliminates this because we don't have PC hardware.
Hmm.
We have an intelligent embedded gateway. End of story. And we patch this. You don't know about it. You know.
Yeah.
So that's a huge, in my opinion, that's one of the biggest ones there. So the initial cost of investment is way down. You literally just pay for your sensors, that gateway, the cell modem, and you're done. And it keeps also the simplicity in place. So the maintenance is low. You don't have to worry about this thing. You don't have to worry about when Microsoft is patching anything. It all happens in the cloud. Amazon does all of that automatically. Um, so that's all there. And then, as I said, we have the remote health monitoring built in. Who does that, right? Like when you have a system running and something isn't working, now you're scrambling for this tech support phone number or email. Then you get frustrated because the vendor's not getting back to you because they're busy with other folks. And you're panicking while your system is down for 2 days and you can't get anybody to help you. You don't know what's going on, and you get frustrated, right? So we don't have any of that because the moment something is wrong, the second something is wrong, about it, we know about it, and game on. We're on it. So so
And I
that's the
got
sort of thing.
I got to believe if there's an application that you want to make sure it is always running optimally, not at risk, it's going to be your fire detection system, right?
Exactly. That's
I
that's why we
gotta
have
believe.
that's why we have so many layers there that of self-monitoring and redundancy. Um, yeah, so we talked about application software updates, user licenses, right?
Hmm.
So in our system, I've seen models out there. I'm not saying everybody does it, but I've seen models out there. Okay, you want to send notifications to 10 users. You pay 10 licenses because one for each user is able to receive messages. Or people want to look at dashboards to just inform themselves. So typically, again, license structures out there like, okay, you want how many people accessing the system per user, you pay this much, right? So our system does away with that. We have unlimited users, unlimited dashboards, unlimited notifications, you knock yourself out. You want to send a message to 500 people, do it. Do it 15 times a day if you want. There's no additional cost. The lifetime cost, as our little graphic here is, therefore, our cost burden is so much lighter, because you really, I mean, yes, we do have a subscription, but it's so reasonable for what you're getting. Like it's almost like, why wouldn't you do it?
Next topic here, I guess, to dive in a little deeper on. You touched on this already, talking about the Internet of Things, and then also explaining what the industrial Internet of Things are. And this is a big part of iEFD. Maybe you could touch a little more on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the expandability of our system, as we said before, we are sensor agnostic, and that really means we can hook up any conceivable sensor. We can talk to any piece of data point out there and tie this in. As long as it makes sense to the application, we can bring this all together. So even though we are primarily a thermal imaging company, we realize that there's a lot of value being added if we can put additional sensors into the mix and create more complex rule sets. So this could be any number. We have a few listed here, like a smoke detection. Let's say we're doing a warehouse early fire detection, and we actually are working on one of those where we are deploying smoke detectors in addition to thermal cameras. Now, why would you do this? You have thermal cameras. You were just saying they're great. They're seeing everything. And well, the problem is this warehouse is fairly packed with shelves. So the vantage points are very limited with respect to what the cameras can see. And either you would have to put an unreasonable amount of cameras all over the place, or you augment the camera sensing capabilities with something else. And in this case, we decided to go with smoke detectors. And because the cost for the smoke detectors are a lot less, and since there's just row after row after row of shelf that goes almost up to the ceiling, there's a lot of occlusion. So we have strategically placed cameras to look down the hallways, if you will, but we also have smoke detectors above the shelves, because if something happens, it's going to happen on the shelf. And if it rises up, there's smoke detection, and there's your augmentation of the sensor, right? So therefore, we create that extra level of detectability, and we can literally plaster smoke detectors all over the place with the additional backup of the thermal cameras and seeing what's going on, right? So we can sense heat and we can sense smoke, and then we should be covered pretty well.